that was interesting to me. Another thing that was interesting to me is like, I felt like Lexi Hall was doing really well this game. She was 2 for 2 from 3. She was 2 for 3 from the field. She hit down a couple free throws. I thought she was doing well on defense, and she sat for so long. And I didn't really understand that either as to why Lexi sat so long, because I feel like it's something with Lexi, like she's had a stretch of games where
when a professional basketball coach walks off the floor and says a game was rigged, it sends a signal. Not because coaches don't feel that way sometimes, not because players and fans don't have those same thoughts when a whistle doesn't go their way, but because coaches know they are not supposed to say it out loud. There is a professional code, an understanding that the league is a business, and that the business depends on people believing the product is legitimate. So when Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, walks away from a game her team just won and voices the kind of frustration that the word rigged carries, you have to stop and ask what on earth happened on that floor. What happened was one of the strangest, most chaotic, most wildly uneven basketball games of the entire WNBA season. A game that started like a disaster, turned into something genuinely exciting, built up to a comfortable lead, and then collapsed into fourth quarter madness that had nothing to do with the actual basketball being played and everything to do with referees who completely lost the plot. A game that the Indiana Fever won 86-77 over the Phoenix Mercury, and that somehow still felt wrong by the time the final buzzer sounded. If you are following this Fever season and you want real, honest breakdowns of everything happening with this team, subscribe to the channel. We are covering every game, every coaching decision, every controversy, and there is no shortage of material this year. Hit that subscribe button, and you will not miss a single video. Now let's go back to the beginning, because this game did not start the way anyone expected. The Indiana Fever opened against a Phoenix Mercury team that had won 5 games on the season. The Mercury are not a good team this year. They are the kind of opponent that a Fever squad with Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston should beat comfortably and without drama. Instead, they scored 6 points in the first quarter. 6 points. That is a number that should not be possible in a professional basketball game. 7 turnovers before the first 12 minutes were up. Air balls, shots clanking off the backboard so hard you thought the structure itself might give way. Lexi Hall hit a three-pointer on the very first possession of the game, and then the offense went completely dark. For the entire rest of the quarter, nothing worked. No ball movement, no cutting, no screens being set properly. Players were catching passes and immediately going one-on-one against a defense that was ready for them. With 5 seconds left, Kelsey Mitchell hit another three-pointer. Those 2 shots were the only field goals the Fever made in the entire first quarter. It was genuinely one of the worst offensive performances you will see at a professional level. And the frustrating part is that it was against a team that had no business holding them to single digits. But then something changed. The second quarter looked like a completely different roster had walked through the locker room doors. The Fever scored 35 points in those 12 minutes. Caitlin Clark put up 15 of those herself, hitting deep threes, playing in rhythm, making fast decisions, and getting her teammates involved. The ball was moving. Players were cutting to the basket instead of standing and watching. Screens were actually setting up defenders properly. The pace picked up. The rotations on defense started making sense. And the Fever went from looking like they might not crack 20 points in the first half to putting up 41 by halftime. That is a 35-point swing in a single quarter. That is what this team is capable of when they actually play the right way. The third quarter extended that momentum. Indiana scored 30 more points and built a lead that looked comfortable enough that the game felt settled. The broadcast showed a stat that told the whole story of the middle portion of the game. After that disastrous first quarter, the Fever had gone on a 68-33 run across the following 2.5 quarters. That is dominant basketball. The Phoenix Mercury were competitive in the first quarter, only because Indiana was completely dysfunctional. Once the Fever started playing actual basketball, the gap between these two teams became very obvious. Fever fans watching at home or in the arena were not relaxed at that point, though. Anyone who has followed this team knows exactly why. Even with a double-digit lead going into the fourth quarter, there was genuine anxiety in the fan base, and that anxiety turned out to be warranted for reasons nobody could have predicted. The fourth quarter opened with a play that should not have been remarkable. Caitlin Clark and DeWanna Bonner were running down the court together. Their arms got tangled up the way arms do when two athletes are competing for space in real time. They exchanged some words. Nothing physical happened. No shoving, no grabbing, Nothing that you would flag as dangerous or unusual in any basketball game at any level. Two competitive players talking trash to each other is as old as the sport itself. The referees blew the whistle and called technical fouls on both of them. From that decision forward, everything in the fourth quarter went sideways. Other players got involved, the way they do when technicals get called, and the tension rises suddenly. Myisha Hines-Allen stepped into it. Sophie Cunningham was in the mix. Alyssa Thomas got involved. By the time the referees finished sorting through it, 5 players had been assessed technical fouls, 3 from the Indiana Fever side, 2 from the Phoenix Mercury side. All of this from an exchange of words while running down the court. All of this in a game where the Fever were up by 16 to 18 points, and the outcome was not in serious doubt. The referees did not settle things down after those technicals. They accelerated the chaos. Every single possession from that point forward seemed to produce a whistle. Every physical contact, no matter how routine, got called. Every word exchanged between players became a potential technical foul. The game that had been flowing well through 3 quarters became completely unwatchable. You could not get through 20 seconds of play without another stoppage. Players were frustrated. Coaches were frustrated. And the officials seemed to be operating from a position of pure anxiety, blowing their whistles to demonstrate control, while actually demonstrating the opposite. There was a moment where things genuinely escalated. Alyssa Thomas got the ball and went to work, which for Alyssa Thomas means one thing. She puts her head down, drops her shoulder, and drives hard to the basket. She does not shoot threes. She does not pull up from mid-range. She goes downhill, uses her physical strength to get through defenders, and finishes at the rim. That has been her identity as a player throughout her entire career, and defenses account for it by never bothering to guard her past the foul line, because she is simply not going to shoot from there. She went right at Myisha Hines-Allen with that same approach. Shoulder down, hard drive to the rim. Hines-Allen, who had clearly reached her limit with everything happening in that quarter, batted the ball away and then pushed her. That was the one genuinely physical act in the entire sequence. Everything before it was verbal. The push was a foul. It was Hines-Allen's second technical of the game, which meant an automatic ejection. Under the rules, that call was correct. But the rules do not exist in a vacuum, and context always matters. The referees had already spent several minutes turning a manageable situation into a pressure cooker by inserting themselves into every exchange and calling technicals on conversations. They created the environment for that escalation. When players are frustrated, and every little thing is being called, and the game they prepared for has been replaced by a strange, stop-and-start version of itself, someone is eventually going to push back too hard. Hines-Allen did, and she paid for it. What followed was the most thoroughly over-officiated stretch of basketball you are likely to see in a professional setting. The whistles kept coming with no logic or rhythm. Every possession was interrupted before it could develop into anything. The game became a series of stoppages strung together by occasional attempts at actual basketball. And then, as though the referees needed to provide one final, definitive moment to explain everything Stephanie White was going to say after the game, they called a foul with 2 seconds remaining on the clock. 2 seconds. The Indiana Fever up by double digits. Both teams with their complete third-string lineups on the floor. Deep bench players getting garbage time minutes in a decided game. And a referee blew a whistle on that. On those players. At the 2-second mark. That is not officiating a basketball game. That is something else entirely. And nobody in that building could explain what it was or what purpose it served. The final score was 86-77 Indiana. They got the win. But Stephanie White, standing in front of reporters after the buzzer, was not talking about the win. She was talking about what happened in that fourth quarter, and the frustration she expressed was not a slip of the tongue or an impulsive reaction to a single bad call. It was the conclusion of someone who had just watched a game get systematically disrupted by officiating decisions that defied any reasonable explanation. Her reaction was understandable. The Fever were up by nearly 20 points at their peak in the fourth quarter. The Mercury are not a team with the personnel or the momentum to mount that kind of comeback. The game was essentially won. What the referees did was turn a comfortable, controlled victory into a chaotic, stressful, unwatchable hour of basketball that ended with fouls being called in literal garbage time on players who had nothing to do with any of the earlier events. Coaches are trained to be diplomatic about officiating. They know the rules around public criticism. They deliver the same careful phrases about focusing on what they can control. When a coach breaks from all of that and uses language like rigged, they are telling you exactly how far beyond the acceptable line the officiating went. For the players themselves, Clark finished with 24 points and 9 rebounds. She was invisible in the first quarter, and then took over in the second, the way that elite players are supposed to when their team is struggling and someone needs to step up. She sat down with about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter after picking up a foul, which made sense given the circumstances. The game was under control, things were getting chippy, and there was no reason to have your best player on the floor risking an injury or an ejection in a game already won. But then she came back in with 2 minutes left, played for about a minute, did not get her 10th assist for a double-double, and came back out again. That substitution pattern did not have a clear logic to it. Either you are protecting your star player in a decided game, or you are not. The half measure in between left a lot of questions about what the actual plan was from the bench. Lexi Hull's playing time was another question without a clean answer. She started well, hit a 3 on the opening possession, finished 2 for 2 from 3, and was making solid rotations on defense. She was in rhythm. She was playing with confidence. And then she sat for an extended stretch through the second and third quarters and only came back in during the final garbage time. Hull has had a difficult run of games this season and has visibly struggled with consistency. Those are exactly the moments when a player needs to stay in the flow of the game, when they are playing well, not pulled out and left to go cold on the bench. The decision to bench her made the confidence question worse, not better. Nalissa Smith was the standout of the entire night. She finished with 10 rebounds, 7 or 8 of those coming in the first quarter alone when the team around her was completely lost offensively. She ended with the best plus-minus on the entire Fever roster at plus 15. Through every momentum swing, through the first quarter disaster, through the fourth quarter chaos, Smith competed at a high level from tip-off to the final buzzer. She was crashing the boards, setting physical screens, doing the work that does not show up in highlight packages but absolutely matters when you are trying to win basketball games. That kind of consistency and effort is the standard that the whole roster should be matching every single night. Aliyah Boston finished with 8 points and 9 rebounds in 29 minutes. And those numbers were quieter than what you want from someone of her caliber. She was not demanding the ball in the post, was not aggressive on the offensive end, and was not making her presence felt the way she is fully capable of doing. Some of that can be attributed to the disrupted rhythm of the game and the constant stoppages, but Boston has to find ways to impact the outcome even when the flow is not in her favor. That is what players at her level are expected to do. For Phoenix, Alyssa Thomas led with 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists. She was the one player on that Mercury roster who competed at a consistently high level throughout the game. Kalani Brown-Cooper had 20 points but fouled out, including some late calls that made about as much sense as everything else the officials were doing by that point. Dewana Bonner played 27 minutes and contributed 7 points and 3 rebounds. The Mercury competed, but they are exactly the team their record describes them as. They are not a force that should seriously test the Indiana Fever. They are a team that Indiana should handle efficiently and move on from. The rematch between these two teams is on the horizon, and the expectation should be the same. Win the game, win it cleanly, win it for 40 minutes without waiting until the second quarter to figure out how to score. Win it in a way that does not require Stephanie White to walk out of the locker room afterward, explaining to reporters why the officiating crossed a line. The Fever are talented enough to do exactly that. They showed it in that 68-33 run. They showed it in the second and third quarters, when the ball was moving and the pace was right and the effort was there. The question is whether they can sustain it, whether they can build a real identity around consistent execution, rather than these wild swings between brilliant basketball and something completely unrecognizable. Stephanie White snapped after this game because she had every reason to. But the best possible response to bad officiating is to play so well that the officiating cannot touch the outcome. Make the lead so large that no amount of fourth quarter whistleblowing changes the result. Make it impossible for the conversation after the game to be about anything other than how dominant the performance was. The Fever can do that. This roster has enough talent to make that the norm rather than the exception. They need to start doing it on a regular basis. Stay subscribed to the channel for every game, every breakdown, and every moment this Fever season gives us to talk about. There is more of this to come, and when the big moments happen, we will be here covering all of it. We will see you in the next one.